Welcome to Facts for Real Videos. From a construction blunder that resulted in one of the world's most iconic landmarks to a devastating building collapse in China, here are the 5 construction projects that did not go as planned. We start with number 5. Riverside Lotus Complex. China is well known for their extraordinarily quick, efficient, and record-breaking construction projects. As the world's most populous country, it must keep up with the ever-increasing demand for housing and infrastructure. In reality, China managed to construct more than 6 million residential homes in 2021 alone, making its construction and real estate industries by far the world's largest and most developed. However, due to its sheer scale and complexity, as well as tight timetables and profit margins, China's construction sector is infamous for forsaking quality in exchange for speedy returns on investment. And sometimes, these sacrifices prove to be costly and disastrous. The collapse of an entire apartment block at the Lotus Riverside complex in Shanghai was one occurrence that eventually served as a wake-up call. The population of Shanghai was awakened on June 27, 2009, by the loud rumbling noise of a 13-story apartment building collapsing. The recently completed structure collapsed on its side, almost totally intact, narrowly avoiding its neighboring buildings. Unfortunately, one worker who was inside the building to gather his tools at the time of the fall was killed as a result of the incident. According to preliminary investigations, the tragedy was triggered by an ongoing excavation for an underground garage in the building, which may have caused the structure to tip over. The excavation, according to the assessment, weakened the building's foundations. As a result of the digging, the surrounding riverbank collapsed, allowing water to mix with the land. The dirt eventually muddied and loosened, causing the building to fall. The research showed a serious issue within the sector in addition to the uprooted foundations. Before the tragedy, the business behind the project was apparently advised of the potential dangers. After repeated warnings concerning the unstable dirt, a representative of the overseeing company even informed reporters that they had been constantly ignored by the construction firm. 6. The supervising company was then revealed to have been recruited by the construction firm itself to oversee the project. Any and all issues would be handled directly by the construction firm, the same entity that employs them in the first place. Because of this conflict of interest, the building firm had the authority to postpone or lower the price charged by the supervising business if the concerns were reported to the local authority's quality control department. Following the collapse of the building, 9 key members of Shanghai Zhongxin Construction were held for further investigation. Following the tragedy, a substantial number of consumers who had previously purchased properties from the developer wanted refunds or compensation. Number 4. The modern skyscraper. The Intempo skyscraper in Benidorm, Spain, is the tallest residential skyscraper in the European Union, standing more than 200 meters tall and including 47 floors. Construction on the skyscraper began in 2006, thanks to a €92 million financing from the Spanish savings bank Caixa Galicia. At the time, the project was projected to be completed in 3 years. However, only a year after work on the project began, the global financial crisis of 2008 significantly hampered progress. All building activity was abruptly halted when the construction company in charge of the project declared bankruptcy. When word got out that there would be no lifts in the building, it drew a lot of interest from the media. The tale was first published in a Spanish newspaper, and it immediately traveled to other media outlets. However, this was a bogus assertion, to which sales manager Rafael Ballestas stated, "We are constructing the highest residential skyscraper in Europe, so how is it possible to build without lifts?" Even if this story is false, not everything in this project proceeded as intended. When a new business took over the project in 2010, development on Intempo resumed. Workers, on the other hand, went 4 months without pay and threatened to strike as a result of the salary issues. The lift crashed when 13 people were inside after it was installed for the workers to use. Fortunately, the emergency brakes activated, averting a disaster, and only 2 workers were sent to the hospital. Aside from that, Spain's real estate market quickly recovered during the financial crisis, and things were looking well for the development of Intempo, which was now expected to be completed in early 2014. However, just 1 year before the revised deadline, the architects involved in the project abruptly quit, refusing to explain their reasoning to the media. Only a year later, the project's owner declared bankruptcy, sparking suspicion that the architects would leave due to financial difficulties with the development. And Temple was once again abandoned for the next few years. Finally, in 2017, SVP Global, a Connecticut-based company, took up the project and entirely transformed it. The corporation was able to complete the project and even overcome the hurdles of the COVID-19 pandemic after investing €60 million. The Intempo Tower finally opened its doors in 2021, 15 years after construction began, and after many new owners and financial issues. Number 3. The Berlin Aquadom. The Aquadom, located inside the Radisson Collection Hotel in the center of Berlin, was the world's largest cylindrical aquarium, standing 25 meters tall and holding 1 million liters of water. The Aquadom, the hotel's centerpiece, housed around 1,500 unique tropical fish from 100 distinct kinds. The aquarium even had a transparent lift shaft that ran through the center, allowing hotel guests to get up close and personal with the swimming fish. Because it was such a large aquarium in the midst of a hotel, it had to be routinely maintained and cleaned to assure not just the safety of the fish, but also the safety of hotel guests and passers-by. However, on December 16, 2022, the entire aquarium ruptured, releasing 1 million liters of seawater into the hotel lobby and subsequently onto the streets outside. The hotel's interior was wrecked by the rapid surge of water, which even managed to entirely ruin the building's entrance. The unexpected surge of water was so intense that local seismographs detected the shockwaves caused by the aquarium's collapse. Fortunately, the incident occurred early in the morning, when there were few people in the vicinity. Only 2 persons were hurt and taken to the hospital as a result of the aquarium's collapse. According to authorities, if the fall had occurred during peak hours, it would have been fatal. Material fatigue is the most likely cause of the aquarium's collapse, according to investigations into the incident's probable cause. The enormous temperature difference between the warm water inside the aquarium and the cold air outside, which was apparently below freezing the night before the incident, may have caused the aquarium's acrylic panes to deteriorate and finally crack, according to experts. Perhaps a little surprising, number 2 is the Pisa Tower. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is one of Italy's most important structures, with over 6 million visitors each year. Nonetheless, Italy's most well-known is the result of a structural fault. The tower was built in the 13th century to function as a freestanding bell tower for the Pisa Cathedral. The characteristic 4-degree tilt of the tower may be traced back to the tower's construction in 1173. When the ground story was being built, the tower began to sink into the earth on one side. Because the tower was built on top of loose and unstable subsoil, and because the foundation was only 3 meters deep, the tower gradually began to lean as the ground could not hold the structure's weight. So, how did the tower manage to last all these years? Why isn't it collapsing and simply staying in this position? According to one story, the tower only survived because building was delayed for a long period since the Republic of Genoa was engaged with battles with its neighboring countries. Because of the building hiatus, the underlying soil had enough time to settle and harden over time. The tilt of the tower gradually deteriorated over the next few decades when the project was finally completed about 200 years after work began. The 4-degree tilt had risen to as much as 5.5 degrees by the 1990s, and the Italian authorities began to worry that the historic tower would collapse. Following the sudden collapse of another tower in the town of Pavia in 1989, the tower was quickly closed to the public and measures were undertaken to stabilize it. To save weight, the bells at the top of the tower were removed, and cables and lead counterweights were inserted to lessen the structure's tilt. As a result, at the turn of the century, the tower's tilt had been reduced to slightly under 4 degrees. Today, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is one of Italy's most visited monuments, thanks to a building error more than 800 years ago that gave it its unmistakable tilt. Sometimes, despite appearances, mistakes can be beneficial. Number 1. Department store Sampoong Seoul, South Korea's capital, witnessed a massive construction and development boom in the late 1980s. Millions of dollars were invested on the city after it was chosen to host the 1988 Summer Olympics. As a result, practically all of the structures constructed in Seoul during this time period were built by construction companies eager to complete their projects as rapidly as possible. The Sampoong department store, a 9-story shopping mall erected in one of Seoul's busiest and most commercialized neighborhoods, was one such structure constructed during this time period. The original intention for the development was to build an apartment block, but this was quickly abandoned by Lee Jun, the future chairman of the Sampoong Group's construction division. As a result of this abrupt adjustment, a number of critical support columns were removed from the drawings to allow for the building of escalators and an additional level. The construction company that was scheduled to work on the project expressed their reservations about the change, but instead of listening to their concerns, Lee Jun sacked them and replaced them with his own. The department store was finished in about 2 years and attracted an estimated 40,000 people per day, making it one of the most successful commercial institutions in the area at the time. By 1995, cracks began to develop on the building's top level, but Lee Jun simply ordered his staff to shift stores and inventory to the basement and ignored the early warning signs. On the morning of June 29, 1995, the fissures had become so large that management was forced to close the entire 5th level to the public. Later in the day, engineers were dispatched to investigate the problem, and they discovered that the entire building was in danger of collapsing. An emergency board meeting was conducted, and the directors of the store even advised that all employees and customers be evaluated. Despite these warnings, Lee Jun refused to vacate the facility, fearing that he would lose potential money for the day. It was claimed shortly after the meeting that Lee Jun had departed the building before to the incident. At 5:52 p.m., the store began to make cracking noises, prompting workers to promptly evaluate all customers and employees. But it was all too late. The roof of the store collapsed in seconds, plunging down into the lower floors. All of the support columns in the south wing collapsed quickly, trapping around 1,500 people in the subsequent rubble. In the aftermath, the catastrophe claimed the lives of 502 people, making it the biggest peacetime disaster in South Korean history. Soon after the fall, Lee Jun, his son, and other important members of his company were found guilty of carelessness and sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. The incident also prompted a thorough assessment of the country's building safety laws and regulations, exposing widespread corruption. During the development of the business, high-ranking city officials were discovered to have taken bribes from Lee Jun himself. They were later sentenced to 10 years in prison as well. Today, in a contentious move by Seoul's local government, the Sampoong department store property has been sold to a private developer, and a luxurious apartment complex has been built on top of the sad site. To commemorate the occurrence, a memorial was quickly erected elsewhere. Do you know of any other building blunders like these? Which projects would you like us to tackle next? Please let us know in the comments section below. If you liked it, please subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.